Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I would like to thank you all for joining us today for our Meet the Chairs discussion with Dr. Tony Grubbs, Chair of our Department of Romance and Classical Studies, and Dr. Stephen D. Benedetto, Chair of our Theater Department in MSU's College of Arts and Letters. My name is Jordan Joseph, and I will be moderating today's discussion. A little bit about me is I'm an incoming junior studying accounting, and I've spent the last 2 years as a professional writing major in RAC as well. I'm also a student intern for the College of Arts and Letters in the Development Office. Before we begin the discussion, for those of you who are new to Zoom, if you look at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A button. You may use that button for any questions you have at any point of the webinar. We will be sure to keep track of your questions and address them to Dr. Grubbs and Dr. D. Benedetto throughout. I would also like to let you know that this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel within the next few days for those who could not make it or if you'd like to watch it again at your leisure. The only faces that will be shown on today's discussion and on the recorded version are those of the presenters, so you do not have to worry about your camera or microphone. I would now like to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Tony Grubbs. Dr. Grubbs, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Jordan, and please call me Tony. We're all friends here, and no need for such formalities. I was looking through the guest list, and first of all, I'd like to welcome everybody to the conversation, to the Cal Conversations today. It's unfortunate that we're not able to be in a more intimate setting, but at least we are together, albeit virtually. I was happy to see some familiar faces or some familiar names. Pat McConaughey is attending today, and I've known Pat since I came to Michigan State in 2005. In fact, he was the interim dean of the college at the time, and he hired me. So we have a lot in common, and he's also a scholar in early modern studies as myself. And then, so it's really nice to see our supporters here. A little bit about me is, as I mentioned, I came to Michigan State in 2005. My PhD is from Indiana University in Hispanic Studies with a minor in theater, primarily in theater history. And I've been the chair of RCS, of Romance and Classical Studies, since for the last 2 years. I was the interim chair, and I was appointed by the dean to continue for the next 5 years in RCS as chair, and it's quite an honor for me to serve in the position. RCS is a very diverse and inclusive department, and we teach French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, Latin, Ancient Greek, and in addition to teaching, we research those languages, cultures, and literatures. We have 5 graduate programs, 2 major programs, and 5 minors. So we have several students in service, several students throughout the university. One thing that stands out in RCS is our dedication and commitment to study abroad. We have 15 programs that I counted. I think there might be more actually, in over 10 countries. And all of our majors end up a part of their graduation requirement is has an experiential aspect, so they study abroad, and we have most of our minors do too. So we send about close to 300 students a year at least abroad. So that's something that really stands out. We also have a lot of internships that we offer internationally, but this year we're doing global internships, but they are virtual. So that's a little about our department. I'll pass things over to Stephen, and he can tell you about the Department of Theater.
Thank you, Tony. I want to say, as I was looking through the guest list as well, I'm really grateful to see that our Friends of Theater supporters are here, and many of our most ardent supporters whose help over the years has really fueled our student learning and the opportunities we've been able to offer our students. I'm brand new. I just started July 15th. And I come with a background in theater history. I started as a performer, but quickly found that I love literature and culture as much. So my career has been sort of speckled with art making and a lot of writing about theater and theater practice, the wonderful things that artists imagine into this world. So I'm very excited to join my colleagues here and join the team as we move into this uncharted territory of what the theater and what education is going to look like into the next century. Our program offers graduate programs, MFA programs in theater arts, so theater design, theater management, acting, directing. We have bachelor programs that run the gamut from theater studies to design, management, a minor in dance. Our practices are a mix of hands-on, ancient, apprentice-like education combined with a more traditional humanistic look at the cultures, literature, and society that has given birth to the practices that we make use of today. So we're always looking to the past to create the future, and our students really get a hands-on experience of how to make live or real the past and the future in their work on our stages. We are lucky enough to have a production season where our community is able to come in and see our students work through what they're learning in their classes on stage through these productions. We have the summer the renowned summer theater, Summer Circle Theater, which is so much a part of life here. And it's just a thrill to be able to share the work our students do as they move towards their professional lives in the theater or across the disciplines that they may find after leaving us. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome, thank you so much. We had a question submitted, and it is, what career paths are students in RCS and theater prepared for? So why don't we start with RCS, Tony?
Sure. One of the biggest misconceptions that exists is that our graduates are only qualified for one thing, and that's teaching language. And while that's definitely true, and we are lucky to have one of the top-rated college of education in the world, and we do graduate many Spanish educators, there's so much more that our students do. We find that they're hired in jobs as translators, interpreters. We see them working in the financial world, especially internationally. There's a really heavy presence in publishing and professional writing. We have students working in marketing and business, nonprofits, agricultural management. So they're really, what language is communication. And what happens is these students are learning languages, they're learning different cultures, and they're globalized citizens. They're learning about other cultures. They're learning about the human condition and how we need to work together. So we're focusing on educating educators, but at the same time, providing students with a professional background that they can use use the language as a primary source of their career path, or using it as something that's ancillary or auxiliary. And we've been very successful. Our students, our undergrads have enjoyed. I just did a performance review last year of our undergraduates, and in the last few years, we've had close to 100% placement for students, either in their jobs or going to graduate school. So it's something that we're very proud of. And the department also we're emphasizing traditional philological studies of literature, but then we're also moving forward and really working towards relevance, looking at topics and training our students to be able to work in fields that are very relevant today. Migration studies, for example, is a big emphasis that we have. And we're seeing a lot of students moving out into the social sector where they're working with a lot of nonprofits and really making a difference.
Thanks, Tony. Yeah, I think the similarities in a lot of ways, we don't often think about the similarities between the different programs in arts and letters. But very much theater is a humanistic subject as much as it's a practical hands-on subject. So our students do all sorts of things. Theater is really, okay, I'm kind of biased here, but I think theater is at the heart of everything, really. Right? We study philosophy, we study literature, we study culture, we steal from the sciences, we make use of current politics. We really find a place in our ways of thinking that make use of the world around us and then creates live stories, right? Ways to engage on a very personal level with our history, with our future, with our present. So our students go into all sorts of different degree paths. So yeah, we have the stereotypical, we're gonna go do pre-professional, we're gonna go start auditioning in LA, Chicago, New York, or what sometimes markets that students have come from or think are the cool new hot place to go. But we also end up sending students off to law school to become federal judges. We send them into event management. We send them into business. We send them into lots of different fields. So some of it goes into pre-professional. I'm going to go out into the world. Some go off to graduate school to get more specialized with their practical school skills so they can go and launch themselves into high-level industry practices. And others use these skills to create new businesses. Something like 85% of all arts graduates end up starting a nonprofit at some point in their life. So there's a real entrepreneurial spirit of where we're using our skills, our communication skills, our presentation skills, really our problem solving skills to contribute to a number of different industries. So our paths are never straight. Some stay in theater, some diverge, but they're always using the basic tools that they've trained in. Sticking to budgets, collaboration, sticking to stressful schedules, putting themselves out, taking critique and moving on. So it's a very versatile degree that we most know through Broadway and through television, but it's really our trainees are found in all aspects of life.
Thank you both. We had another question come in. How relevant to today's world are your disciplines and why?
Well, as I said, these days with the forms of communication, with media, with the facility that we communicate around the world, you know, we are educating communicators, and what we're able to do in RCS is we're teaching communication, we're teaching communication strategies, and we're instructing our students how to do this with an expanded number or expanded group, because they are knowledgeable in different languages and cultures. Besides the communication aspect, as I mentioned, we're moving in a different direction, which Stephen touched upon with the theater majors. And there's the traditional, let's be a college professor or let's be a language teacher but in RCS right now, we are really focusing and changing, or not changing, but creating new tracks for our students that include those. Those are never going to go away. But we're really starting to focus on professional development within those languages. Languages for special professions right now is something that's very attractive to employers, and something that we've been working on. And this is, you know, language of special purposes, whether it's medicine, whether I mentioned agriculture, social work, business is the obvious one, but these are expanding. And what we've been doing is we've been making collaborations and forming partnerships with various colleges around the university. Besides that, we're working on professional writing in the languages, and this is primarily in the majors with Spanish and French, and this is where we're developing models for professional writing, working with RAC, with Writing, Rhetoric, and American Cultures, working with that department to be able to put together certificate programs and classes that students are learning they're learning the professional writing, but in a second language. So, with our department, as Stephen said, in theater, they're historians, they're philosophers, they're actors, they're directors. We're really the same thing in our department. We're filmmakers, we're literary critics, we're philosophers, we have historians. And, I like to say that what we do in RCS, we do what everybody else does in the college, but we do it in a different language. So, the training that the students get, it's just not how to conjugate verbs. It's how to negotiate this globalized world, and to approach society and their profession from a humanistic perspective.
Thanks, Tony. I'm just always amazed at how much our programs both combine sort of technical know-how and really coterie knowledge of a subject that we've inherited, but also this notion of how do we use this knowledge, right? How do we, you may conjugate verbs in some of your basic classes, but we teach people to pick up a hammer and a saw and, stitch something. Or even more basic, how to breathe and relax. My first conservatory class was, how do I relax enough to be able to be creative and work in an environment and understand what it feels like to move through a space. And this is sort of what the most relevant part of our profession is. It's about liveness, right? It's about being a human being in a body, moving through a space and communicating and speaking to other people, whether it's within a scene, a fictional enactment, or whether it's engaging with audiences in real time. And this event is one of those things that shows us, in some ways, the necessity of it, right? So with all the technology and media that we have been using increasingly in this last century, comes also a disassociation and isolation. And we're all feeling that rather acutely. The technology in one way is keeping us together, but we're also isolated. We're craving that human contact. And that's what theater is all about. It's about liveness. It's about creating interactions between people in real time, or if not in real time, between an audience, enacting a visceral response from somebody who is participating in the work of art. And that is what theater concentrates on, and it appeals to our most basic needs as human beings. That's why it's been around for so long. That's why it's almost been killed for so many times throughout history, or repressed. Everybody says it's dying, but it comes back because ultimately we want to be in the same space with others, and we want a playful place where we can be free of our social constraints to find different ways of communicating with each other, or being able to provoke questions in ways that are less threatening than the high stakes situations about what's happening on the streets every night in protest, right? We can work through some of those issues in our playful spaces so that we know how to deal with the world around us. So liveness is really what makes our major relevant and essential and important today.
Awesome. Thank you both again. Another question just came up in the Q&A, and it is, what are the programs or initiatives that you hope to see in the next 3 to 5 years in your departments? Tony, would you like to go first?
We are currently working on what I've been mentioning. It's changing, working on different tracks to different professional tracks for our students, for our majors and our minors. We are the professional preparation is really at the forefront of what we're doing right now. We're also turning to, as I mentioned, we're turning to some more social, more outward-facing humanities, more activism in the languages and with the communities, and then also working with the some of the international problems and international issues that are coming out right now, especially having to do with DEI. And in particular, we have a very exciting project with our French faculty who are working with Black French studies. So that's a brief summary of what the direction where we're heading in.
We're sort of at a crossroads at theater, having just walked in the door in a period when, as I first started to get introduced to the faculty, there's a real interest in growing from our base and trying some experiments with what the future will be. How can we at MSU make our let me just start over with this really. What it is we're really trying to figure out how to create the theater of the future, right? We learn from a real basic traditional skill set. We all learn as apprentice. We learn how to build theater and make theater to the highest professional standards today. In the same sense, there's a real desire to see how we can use new media and technology to become a part of that language, right? Not to drag us away from the tradition, but to figure out how the world around us as it changed can become part of our new practices. How can we envision models of production and models of teaching that will embrace the 21st century and make a jump forward much in the same way the 19th and early 20th century jumped forward in innovation in theater practice and in educational practices. So that's what we're focusing on. And it's really brand new, and the faculty is going to come together and we're going to try to figure out what ways we can move forward. And this may be trials. It may be some of the entrepreneurial aspects of our theater that we want to add into this, right? So we have main stage, regional theater, professional theater operations running. Can we add to that the more laboratory, entrepreneurial, storefront experiments into that mix? Will some of the students be able to come together, create a project out of nothing, use very little budget, and present it somewhere on campus or somewhere off campus? Will there be other opportunities to make intermedial experiences where audiences come, pick up an AR vision, look at the location and see a scene being performed there? Will that be site specific? Will it be provocative? We don't know. But we're really thinking about the ways that we can expand on what we do in unique ways to offer skill sets and practice sets for students as they go out after us and perhaps start their new company later on or alongside their professional work in our regional theaters.
And kind of going in a different direction with that, thinking about the student experience on campus and maybe even throughout outreach and service. One thing I'm especially excited about is just from the interview process, Stephen and I really hit it off, and we were talking about potential collaborations between theater and RCS. I'm a theater specialist. With early modern 16th, 17th century Spanish theater, and we have other members in our department who do work with theater and performance studies. I just found out that the inaugural chair of our new department of African and African American Studies is a performance theater scholar, and she is also a playwright. So, thinking about initiatives, collaborations that we can do amongst the three departments and other departments, of course, is something that's really exciting to me. And, bringing in, maybe team teaching general ed a general ed course on classical theater would be something. And, it wouldn't just be, let's read it and talk about and talk about it, but, have these students end up performing something. I mean, I think it's really hard, and I would love to be able to talk to, and I plan to talk to Stephen about programming, but I understand the programming is very complicated for a theater schedule. But I think there's a lot of smaller projects and student-driven projects that we'd be able to work on. A world theater. I mean, we've done the theater. I was looking at past seasons. The Misanthrope was 2 years ago. So there's a lot of Moliere. We can get a lot. There's obviously other French theater we could work with. Some classical Spanish theater. Antigone was in 2015. So I think there's a whole lot there that we're going to be able to work with, and have smaller black box productions, or small theater festivals of micro theater maybe. So I think there's a whole lot that we have to look forward to, not only in research collaboration amongst the faculty, which is something very exciting, but more importantly for the student experience, and to open it up to the students and empower them even more. So let's produce a representation of a fragment of a classical play, of Antigone, or of whatever they choose. So I'm really looking forward to the synergies that Stephen coming into this department is really gonna offer our department and others throughout the college.
Yeah, our department, the faculty are so creative in terms of, well, they're broad in their interests, and they're also creative in finding ways to combine their research interests with the student learning outcomes, right? Providing different types of opportunities and exchanges with students. And I think these are great ways to think about cross-disciplinary collaboration. What better way to understand, a cape and sword play than to try to embody the sense of, masculinity in 17th century Spain, right? So, it would give both parties, both sort of perspectives to a student. One, here's what the history and culture is of this work. And two, here's what it is to live in a different type of body with a different set of cultural constraints. Same sense, can you take a 16th century play, take the heart of that play, and then reimagine it for the 21st century in art, right? Take that as a seed, as the jumping off point, put a romance student in with a drama student, and see what they come up with in terms of a 5-minute project, right? Tirso de Melina's, a cape and sword play in 5 minutes, as seen through the 21st century eyes, right? So there's lots of ways where our students can learn, but we can also create novel theater experiences for our audiences, and ways to create collections, right? A season of it, small scale, offer opportunities to students who don't necessarily want to become professional actors or reach that same level of proficiency with performance, but who want to be in some type of theatrical experience.
And this runs really parallel to one of our major missions at the university and the college and in the departments of inclusion, because this can attract, as Stephen said, students that normally wouldn't think about going to a show at the auditorium or going to the Wharton Center. So it would allow us for opportunities to work with plays, or have students write their own works. Especially with some with minoritized students, indigenous students, there's really, the possibilities are really great for us to really open this up in our college and get and be even more inclusive than we are right now.
And I think theater is very much, it's again, that place where we want to go into our community. We want to latch into our community and our nation in a way. And theater has the unique ability to sort of do it rather rapidly and to start the conversations about the world around us. So part of what we're going to do this year is to create a series of experiments, that we create works that revolve around diversity, inclusion, and sort of contemporary politics in a way, to see what we can do to start the conversation from where we are at MSU, right? So who we are, what we are, how do we move forward and become a part of this national dialogue? And so we're really looking for ways to engage in the now in the performance. And I think to sort of tie it back into the languages, one of the challenges performance studies has been having in the last few years is we studied the contemporary quite a bit. And what we are always looking for is, wait, we suddenly have to teach 17th century theater too. Where are our language experts, right? So it's really important to expose our theater students to languages and cultures outside of the immediate now, to, again, gain a broader understanding of the world and to perhaps spark interest in languages and learning, to come back and enrich our own practice, our own writing, and also to be able to present works that will engage from a cultural perspective, right? How do we engage audiences and other students and other communities in a different way? And I think you need to learn other cultures to be able to even do that within your own culture. And I think there's a lot of potential to be able to do that through these collaborations and synergy.
Absolutely, thank you. One of our participants is wondering, how are faculty planning to create meaningful experiences for students in a virtual environment, and what are some examples of what that would look like in each department?
Well, I'll start. It seems I'm going first on the questions. RCS, I think that my answer is simpler and a little more straightforward. We've been working with online language education for several years. As you know, we have a second language studies center. We have a center for language teaching advancement, and then also we have scholars in both linguistics and languages and in RCS who work on this specifically. So we've been with what's going on this semester with the pandemic, and even with the emergency distance or remote teaching last year, we are pretty well positioned for this, in that we're able to shift. It's not necessarily ideal, but we are able to shift these classes into an online format. So a lot of our courses we're teaching asynchronously with some synchronous meetings, with some scheduled meetings with the students. So we're flipping the classroom a little bit. Our language learners, they've been working with various conversation programs, let's say, with native speakers abroad for 8 to 10 years. So for us, it hasn't been as big of a challenge as I could imagine for someone who is in a set design class. So for us, we've been able to address this pretty well, and we're confident that things are moving forward and the classes are the student experience is going to be a good one. But I think Stephen can talk to you more about the challenges that they're facing, which are more challenging than ours.
Well, as you all know, we have live practice. So, most of what we do revolves groups of people in small spaces for long periods of time. So we've had to make the difficult decision, even before we went remotely, to cancel our season as it would be expected normally. So we're going to be trying a range of projects that try to use the remote circumstances to the best of their ability, or to flip them on their head to some extent and see how can these technological tools be used to create new work or to create some semblance of liveness, right? Can we capture a bit of what it is to have performance, or can we use these tools to figure out how they could later be used live? So we're going to have a series of projects, hopefully all surrounding a diversity, inclusion, politics theme, small scale projects that we can create pod experiences once we're able to bring undergraduates back on campus. But to create small experiences to develop work that can be presented. So maybe it will turn out being a festival of online sort of samplings of what's going, of these projects and the work. Perhaps if we're lucky enough that the world gets to a point where it is safe to have public exhibition, we may have, again, small scale works that are partially produced that may have some live qualities, some virtual qualities, in order to engage on a much more traditional basis our community and our audiences. Because that's, again, part of our mission is to bring those experiences to students so they can respond to audiences and learn about how to tell stories in captivating and intriguing ways and keep people's interest. Our classes will be using devices such as, okay, let's film a monologue or a scene, edit it, and then put it up for critique in a class. Some of that may be synchronous, some of that may be asynchronous. Some of the work will be in professional development. So if we're going to work on auditioning and creating reels for auditions in LA, let's get the light rings and the technology needed to at least replicate what an actor does regularly these days, which is audition remotely from a cell phone. So let's try to replicate these pre-professional skills and use them as teaching tools and ways to practice the work and the learning outcomes that we want. In our design aspect, so a scenic painting, graduate students are able to continue on with their work. So they'll be in the shops painting. It's a much smaller scale in a very, very large space with masks. So it's keeping that, keeping safety at the forefront, but they'll be able to practice some of the skills. And on top of that, we'll have a section of remote learning for undergraduates where they'll be able to do some of that work at home. It's getting the materials to the students. That's one of our challenges, but it's finding ways to both engage those who can be in the space. So often our faculty will be in the spaces, our studio spaces, doing work and working in real time with students, finding novel ways to do this, having voice lessons, with an accompanist on one camera, a teacher on another, and a student in another. They're not perfect, but we can keep our basic learning objectives moving forward. In the same sense, it'll be about using the innovation of our researchers, right? Our creative artists have research projects to do with intermediality. So they'll be trying to find ways to see if some of these techniques can be made usable for pedagogy or even for work, and we will be involving students in that process. It's hard to teach basic shop skills when you can't pick up a hammer or sew, but we're trying to find ways to at least give introductions, the asynchronous parts of our class, the theory parts, the history parts, the basic skill set preparation you need for the time when we can get back into those classrooms. So it's a challenging time, and it's especially frustrating for our students because they want to be in the shops. They want to be building things. They want to be in class rehearsing. They want to be in dance studios dancing. And so it's frustrating to them. And even with social distancing, they would still love to have an opportunity to do that. So we're trying to find ways to capture that energy and keep us moving forward despite the circumstances of 2020.
Thank you. Someone during registration was wondering if fall theater productions are canceled.
So it's not completely canceled. It's sort of a difficult, we have one project, the Imagine project, which is co-produced with the Wharton and the Big Ten initiatives, that it's a new work development. And so we've worked out a way, and this was already far in the works, that we could sort of still keep it going, even our current circumstances. So that's going to end up being a documentary of the development process for a new musical. It's Medusa. So we have the music team. So we have the librettist, the music team, a director, actors working remotely with groups of students to bring this to life. So it's a developmental project where the aim for our students is to be involved in the collaborative give and take of a work being brought to its feet. For the artists, they'll get the chance to work with students and hear their work being sung and moved to in a basic way. And then we're going to have a live stream presentation through the Wharton, ideally, if it all works out, towards, I think, in the end of October. So that will be the closest thing we have to a traditional production. Currently, we're in the process of creating these mini events that are so vague in my talking. We've solicited, essentially set out calls to the faculty and to our graduate students to brainstorm about types of projects that can be done remotely with the possibility of a small scale, partially produced production in the spring. And thus, we will try to find some way to either do it in the fall, have a season of these small works, which may be shown via live stream or video. They may be partially built. So we'll have our designers be able to collaborate with a director, collaborate to build some element of a production, to work within a budget, to adapt that, to sort of get through that process that we can still do remotely, so we can take a costume, bring it to the shop, and have a costume done, right? So it's again, creating pods, but it all has to be stretched out because you can't load in a set with multiple people. It has to be 2 people. So basically, everything we've learned to do over 1,000 years is being done very, very slowly with only 2 people, to try to get something going. So we're working on getting something that our community can share in. It's not going to be the same as usual. These are experiments. It may be something that little pieces of remain in future seasons, when we get back to our full producing season, hopefully by the summer for Summer Circle. Good
to know. Thank you. Tony, has study abroad programs been canceled for the fall?
For the fall, yes. They have been canceled, and we are still waiting to see if study abroad will run in spring. Our programs, they were canceled actually in mid-June. And especially in Spain, there's been more flare-ups of COVID, but at this point, we're not able, the university won't allow it, but we're not able to send students abroad. I think realistically speaking, we might be able to shoot for summer, but spring's very doubtful too. I direct 5 programs, and 2 of them in Spain for spring they're going to decide in December. So the turnaround's going to be quick, even if we do have them. But to be perfectly honest, I really doubt that we will.
Good to know. This next question is specifically for Stephen. What is the balance today between training students for a traditional stage profession and preparing them for digital forms of performance?
It's an interesting question. It's a debate across our discipline, really. So I think that all practice, even our literary and creative practices, so whether you're a dramaturg or whether you're a designer working, it's a mix, right? It's that apprentice-based traditional learning, getting your hands onto a tool, making something, adapting something according to the needs of a production. Digital technologies are an increasing part of that. So the last 30 years in the profession, digital technologies have been finding their way on stage, and through some of the experimental work in the avant-garde theaters, in dance theater, in opera, have been trying to find ways to get the digital to become a part of that live performance. I think that the technology is starting to be able to do what we imagine this type of technology could do. So we were able to reimagine the way in which we train our students to either think in both real space and virtual space, liminal digital space, and also performers to perform both in live spaces, but also for digital spaces. And so by necessity, the profession is changing, and I think after this year, it's going to change rapidly because of the nature of what performers are getting up to in the downtime. And so there will be a lot of, essentially it will be a leap forward in how digital technology is used by performers to keep up this live performance. So I think that any of our programs will have a mix of these traditions, right? Learning the skills in both real time and digital. So if you're drafting, you know, you may draft by hand. Some people still teach it, some don't. You may also do computer rendering. You may also do three-dimensional models of scenic scenography. You may also learn the techniques for acting for a camera, or moving or dancing for a camera, or lighting for a mall space or a digital space. So it has to be a combination of these things, because to create the theater of the future, our students need to have their hands on the vocabulary and the technology of the future, of the present, and to be able to move between live and mediated performance.
Awesome. We had a question come in that asks, is the theater department interested in developing techniques for virtual performance that might be useful for professional and community theater groups?
That's absolutely an interest, and I know several of my colleagues are working on a variety of virtual techniques for the profession. We have some work with motion capture, the use of motion capture for performance. There are some experimentation, in part from our teaching outcomes, with virtual or sort of asynchronous performance. There's been some brainstorming about using AR technology alongside live spaces. So very much the experimental techniques for using digital and finding partnerships within the community for use both at any level of production is, I think, of keen interest, both research-wise, but also for pedagogical reasons, for opportunities for our students to figure out what the world they'll be working in will be. So yes.
Thank you. Let's see here. We had someone write in feedback, and they would just like to let you know that your work is very challenging and rewarding under normal circumstances, and they really admire your creative perseverance in these abnormal circumstances and to hang in there.
Our faculty will very much appreciate it. It's an amazing amount of work the faculty is doing to create experiences for our student that meet our ethical responsibility for arts training. How do we capture what is the most important about arts training in the teaching that we do this semester? So it's very much a challenge that our faculty is tackling, and it is an exhausting challenge. And I have to say, walking in, seeing what was done last year and seeing the success of a lot of what was done on a dime, I'm just in awe of what they were able to accomplish and the amount of energy that they're doing it. So thank you I will share your thanks with our crew.
Thank you. Our next question is for Tony. To what extent do more traditional literature and cultural studies courses fit with the alternative career tracks you have spoken of? Have they been refocused to relate to careers beyond teaching?
Yeah, thank you for asking that, Pat. And I answered that actually in the text box. What's typically happening with the students who prefer the more traditional track of study is that they continue on that track, but then they're also supplementing their language skills with the professional writing and with the special purpose classes that we're offering. So then they're going out into the job market with knowledge, with an even more extensive knowledge, and ultimately finding careers in alt academia. They're writing textbooks, they're working at publishing houses, and even working in some, going on to graduate school, especially in literary translation. So it's such an exciting field for us because it's adding to what we've already been doing, and the results have been great so far.
Thank you. Um, are there any other faculty in Cal that have connections to theater, Stephen?
There are a number. So I'm learning new connections as we speak. Tony and I were talking before we went live about our colleagues in English with Shakespeare backgrounds. We have our new AAAS chair brings performance studies background with her. We have a number of faculty who are interested in dance. Unfortunately, I'm so new that the names haven't quite sunk in with me. But there are a lot of connections, a fabulous amount of connections, and a fabulous amount of goodwill to try to find ways that we all can work together, both for the betterment of our students, but also for our own research interests and collaborative interests. Some of the professional organizations we share commonalities with. It's a college. We're in different disciplines, but we're not that far apart. We're not these individual little silos. We're very much interested in the work of our colleagues across departments.
Awesome, thank you. Someone is wondering what is AAAS and who is the new chair of that new department?
Tony, you want to define AAAS?
AAAS is our newest department in the college. It was approved last year, and it is African and African American Studies. This was a center before, and now it is a full-blown department, and we're really excited about this. And the inaugural chair is Ruth Nicole Brown. And she's the scholar that Stephen has mentioned, and currently, or will be looking for further faculty members. So this is it's a huge step forward for the college. You know, in these days, you know, when you're thinking about reductions and budget cuts and everything else, we're really fortunate that we're able to add this this very valuable department to the college.
Thank you.
And just all of the collaborations, right, between the different departments who are interested in the arts, who are interested in culture, who are interested in finding ways to bring to life anything from, you know, 17th century drama to, you know, installation and performance art, to spoken poetry, to spoken word, to dance. So it's an amazing amount of sort of synergy between arts and cultural related energy on campus.
Thanks. One of our participants is asking how they can help during this time.
Go ahead, Stephen.
Well, I mean, our students, you know, a question of equity comes up. We have students now who on a dime are at home, and suddenly they're having to, say, our design students, I have to create my own studio at home. So instead of having our labs and our studios to work in, they're often having to get supplies for themselves at home. So we're really looking for ways to help them get the supplies they need at home to be able to work alongside our asynchronous teaching. Likewise, we're making use of a lot of programs, the digital technologies that we haven't used before. So we're working on getting licensing for things like StageRight, which is a very popular professional tool, which is also used in education, that you could do light plots on, dance plots that you could collaborate as a team on, that are tailored and designed for working arts professionals. We are teaching design from home. So Vectorworks is suddenly a program that our students need. So I'm very conscious of trying to get our students access to things like computer licenses, to the tools, the paints, the paintbrushes, the little arc lights that you put on front of a computer or on a cell phone to be able to record your monologues, right? So each of them will probably need that as they go out into if they're going to audition out into the world. But these are all extra expenses that didn't count on when our work-study hours are cut. So students who would have worked on campus don't have those hours and now have to go work other jobs off campus. So they're losing a bit of that community. Other things like more practical things, mentorship. We have a great community of professionals who support our department, who have started businesses of their own, who have worked as educators and teachers, which our graduate students are trained to do, right? They're going to become our future educators. So there's a great network, and especially today, as students at the end of this year, we're going to be going out onto that market and don't have those normal trips to conferences and trips to do showcases in New York or in LA. We're looking really for opportunities that our alumni community and our supporters who have experience in creating businesses, experience navigating from being a double major in theater and romance languages into becoming a professor or a CEO somewhere. What are the journeys? And that type of mentorship is something practical we can set up through Zoom and through individual conversations that can help our students in the immediate and doesn't cost more than time. So those are just some of the sort of really simple things. We have some material needs that we'd love support with, or ways to find ways to help facilitate our students get access to computers or technology, and also mentorship and using our community's life experiences.
Thanks, Stephen. Another question for you. Does the theater department intend to continue collaborations with local theaters such as the Williamston Theater? And do you anticipate interactions with ARCA?
So absolutely, we are interested in continuing local collaborations, because that's part of what drew me to MSU, that we have a burgeoning arts community with its established players and a lot of will to create new projects across the region. So we are definitely looking to continue and strengthen our existing collaborations and to work with other community organizations to help provide skills that they may be looking to us to help them in their visions, right? So what can we offer the community to help their goals in creating arts in our region? So it's very much an interest.
Thank you. We have now reached our last question. Before we go, can you tell us about your backgrounds? Stephen, is there a story behind the sculpture behind you? And Tony, where is that beach? Does it have a special meaning?
My sculpture, I had learned about shadow puppetry through various books, and I ordered some, and these are fabulous. They're painted objects, but once you shine a flashlight through them, like the Indonesian shadow puppets, you see this almost intricate lace work in the shape of the characters behind them. So it's an amazingly beautiful object. And in the beginning of the quarantine, when it was dark, my daughters took those and we took flashlights and they created their own little puppet plays. They never had seen the puppets like lit up in that way, but we got back to old-fashioned storytelling and through old technology. So that's that object there. What about those cows there, Tony?
Those cows and bulls. This is a beach at the southernmost tip of Spain in the autonomous region called Cadiz. And the beach is called Bologna, and it's my favorite place in the whole world. And it's kind of a natural beach where the cows and bulls run wild. There's also some Roman ruins by there. It was a town called Baelio Claudia, and a sand dune. It's just my favorite place to be, and it makes me smile during these times when we're not able to travel. So, and you can see Africa from there. So it's just a cool place to be. Nice beach.
All right, thank you both. I've been keeping an eye on the time, and I would like to begin to wrap up our discussion. If your question was not answered, we will be following up with you. I would just like to say thank you to everyone for taking the time to be here today, and the both of you for your transparency and offering your time for these important topics and conversations. As a student myself, it means a lot that our alumni and donors care so much about the college and its students. As a reminder, this recording will be made available on our college YouTube channel in the coming days if you would like to share with those that could not make it. I would also like to note that we will continue to be offering these faculty conversations throughout the fall, so please keep an eye out for an email communication in the month of September. Again, thank you to everyone for participating. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the week, and go green.
Go White.
Bye.
Bye.